So I'm going to start my slideshow here at the Oregon Country Fair without any slides. I think if we wanted, I can hold pictures up like this. But so I'm just going to tell stories that kind of relate to how I got to the Oregon Country Fair, and see what happens and go from there. For a lot of us, myself, it's probably started on a snow day in New Jersey in late 1977 when somebody gave me a little square piece of blotter acid that had nothing on it, a plain white piece of paper, and I took some acid, and life has never been the same since. Right? Who can relate to that one? And so one of my most favorite fair performances that I ever saw was the Reduced Shakespeare Theater. Did you guys ever see that? Right? So fun, right? So I'm going to do the Reduced J. Blakesberg thing really quick, right? 1977, eat acid, go see the Grateful Dead, take photographs, photograph Dan Skinner and half of the other people in this room, eat more acid, have more fun, end up at the rabbit hole. That's my whole performance. That's the Reduced J. Blakesberg performance here. Reduced Shakespeare was so great. God, it got hot in here. All right, so here's my story about how I became a photographer and how I ended up here at the rabbit hole. So I really did take acid in 1977, and I really did meet Dan Skinner on August 12th, 1979. That's that hippie right there. And we've been friends ever since. I love that man to pieces, and as well as many other people that are here I've known for, decades and decades. Randy, who introduced me, Kathy, Alan, Lizzie, Diane, Lauren. The list goes on and on. I mean, it's Lauren. I mean, it's amazing. When we first came to the fair, we saw people that were our age now. We thought they were really fucking old, and now we're really fucking old. We're in our 60s, and all those people that were really old then, they're still here at the fair, and they're 90, right? So in 1977, I saw my first Grateful Dead concert. That was at Englishtown, and a year later, exactly in September of 1978, my dad loaned me his camera, and I photographed the Grateful Dead for the first time, and I was 16 years old. And that next summer, the summer of 1979, I got my 69 Chevy Nova and I drove to Red Rocks to see the Grateful Dead. And that is where I met Dan Skinner right there on his birthday, August 12th, 1979. And from there, the adventure continued. I had a camera. I always like to say I was just a hippie with a camera, which I still kind of am. And I was taking pictures of my friends and I was documenting what was going on in our lives. I have a book that just came out called Retro Blakesberg that I call my visual autobiography, and we brought up just one case because that was all that we could carry up there. And so there's just 7 copies left here because we already sold one. So if you're interested, come and see me afterwards. But that book is sort of the story of what happened to me, and that book is broken up into chapters by decade, right? And so the 1970s, we were young, we were impressionable, we were having a lot of fun, we were doing drugs. Good drugs, right? I think it was Peter Cody said, the hippies were right about the food, we were right about the environment, we were right about the music, and we were right about the drugs. And I have to agree with that, right? Because if I had just started listening to a lot of punk rock back then, instead of eating an organic breakfast here at the Oregon Country Fair, I would have had Pop-Tarts and cigarettes for breakfast. But instead I had a really good scrambled egg thing here. By 1980, the summer of 1980, we were fully immersed and fully on tour. In the spring of 1980, I went to a couple of shows at the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey, which is close to where I lived. And I met this guy named BT, which stood for Brother Tom. And he was about 30, and we thought he was ancient, and we were 19. And he came up to me and said, "Hey man, do you want a dose?" And I said, "Sure." And he rips out a sheet of acid and gives me a half a sheet, 50 hits. And it wasn't perforated, it had silkscreen triangles on it. I'm like, "What's one hit?" He goes, "Each little triangle." So I realized he gave me 50 hits, so I just dosed everybody that was there. And then at the end of the show, he came up to me and he said, "Hey man, if you want, when I get back to San Francisco next week, I'd be happy to overnight you a couple thousand hits of LSD, and you can sell them to your friends in high school, and you can become part of my underground LSD distribution network." Now, I thought that was the greatest offer I'd ever heard in my life, so I immediately gave my parents' home address in Westfield, New Jersey. And BT started just overnighting me just massive quantities of psychedelics. And we pretty much psychedelicized all of New Jersey in that time period of 1980, from April of 1980 for the whole next year. But leading into the summer, it was an epic summer of travel, adventure, people in this room that in this tent that I've met then and traveled with. And so the summer tour began in Tempe, Arizona, and I got into a car with a guy named Dave Gross. Many of you guys know Dave. And he was moving from the East Coast to the West Coast. He had just graduated from college, so he was ancient at 22 years old, and we were 18. And we went to Tempe, Arizona, and then we went to Boulder, right? I don't know, I'm guessing none of you guys were in Boulder last weekend for Dead & Co? No. But it was that was a pretty epic weekend, right? And so in the summer of 1980, and this will blow your mind, those shows in June of 1980 at that same stadium we were in last weekend were billed as the 15th anniversary concerts of the Grateful Dead. Here we are at GB60 in another year and a half, 2 years, so 15th anniversary. So from Boulder, I got in a van. Do you guys remember a t-shirt artist named Ed Donahue, the most legendary t-shirt artist of all time? And so we jumped in that van, and we drove to Portland, Oregon. And what happened in Portland? Mount St. Helens erupted while the band was playing Fire on the Mountain, right? And so, and this is a true story. It is documented, over and over again. And so we came out of the concert and ash was falling, and they were giving us ash reports. 2 inches in Corvallis, 3 inches in Portland. It was like mind-boggling, especially when you're high on psychedelics. And so, we like to call that our summer of love. And so I'm going to go backwards for a second. When I was a teenager in suburban New Jersey, by the time I was 16 and we dropped acid, we were reading things like the electric Kool-Aid acid test, we were reading On the Road, we were looking at magazines like Relics and Rolling Stone, and we were learning about these bands. And for me, I was saying to myself, wow, like maybe someday I can get to San Francisco, and maybe someday I can photograph Ken Kesey or Tim Leary or Owsley or Jerry Garcia or Grace Slick, right? So these were just like hopes and dreams and fantasies, because when you're 16 years old, that's all you have in your life are these hopes and dreams, right? And you want to try and figure out a way to make these a reality. And so, right away, my mind started thinking, like, how the fuck do you get out of New Jersey, right? So, like, I've taken acid, so that's the first step. I'm learning about San Francisco. How do you get to San Francisco? That's the second step, right? And then you go on Dead Tour, and you meet all of you. You meet all these people, right? You meet all these like-minded individuals who are, I think Bob Weir once called us misfits they were misfits playing for misfits, right? That was us, we were them. And so, we discovered our people, right? Just like at the fair, we're all of our people, right? And once you discover your people, your whole life changes, right? That's what it's all about. You go to college, you meet your people, your life changes. There's people here, Lauren, I don't know where Lauren is. I met Lauren in college, and, here we are 40 fucking years later, and we're still hugging and loving and friends. We might not talk every day, but like we are connected. And so that's what that experience did for us, is getting out, meeting those people, having those experiences. Back to the summer of 1980, and so the tour went on: Portland, Seattle, Spokane. We went to Anchorage, Alaska. We saw 3 shows in a high school auditorium in Anchorage on summer solstice 1980. I think they teased that Dark Star for like 3 seconds, and we all freaked out. I mean, like, can you even imagine? Who was here at the fair? Was it 84 Skinny where they played Dark Star at the Greek, and everybody's like, oh my God, I'm leaving the fair and going to the Greek for the last night.
Friday the 13th at the Greek, yeah.
Yeah, so like, we were fucking lunatics, right? I mean, we probably still are. So the summer tour keeps going. It ends in Alaska. We come down. They play 2 shows in Los Angeles and San Diego with a day off in between. Didn't you get arrested at that show, Dan, in San Diego? Bob Weir and Mickey Hart got arrested, but I thought you went to jail for overnight on that one.
Long Beach,
right. And on the day off, in between LA and San Diego, we went to Disneyland and dropped acid. Okay, this is a warning, don't ever drop acid and go on Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay? Because, like, you're gonna walk out there like, what the fuck just happened, right? And so we were at Disneyland with like 10 or 12 of us, and it was like, we were 16, 17, 18 years old. At the shows in LA, we met this woman named Little Stephanie. She was 16 years old, and she was out there with a friend of hers. And my girlfriend at the time was a woman named Tammy, and they were dancing together. And we said to Stephanie, hey, do you want to just come on the rest of the tour with us and come to San Francisco? She's like, sure. Went back, went to her friend's house that she was staying with. She was visiting from New Jersey, called her mother, Joyce, in New Jersey, say, hi, Mom, I met some hippies. I'm going on Dead Tour, and I'm not going back to high school. Like, what the fuck, right? Like, that's like, this was our lives. Like if my daughter said I'm going on Fish Tour, I'd like, fuck you, I'm getting you backstage passes. Anyway, so the summer of 1980 continued. The tour started back up in August, on August 16th, 1980 in Edwardsville, Illinois. And again, it just was epic. And that was the end of the Summer of Love. And it went from Edwardsville, Illinois, and ended in Lewiston, Maine on 9/6/1980. And 9/6/1980 was the fourth of the big Labor Day weekend Grateful Dead concerts on the East Coast. 77 Englishtown, 78 was Giant Stadium, the first time I photographed the Grateful Dead. 79 was Rochester, New York, and 80 was Lewiston, Maine. When they did the 79 Rochester shows, that week before when I met Dan, I also met this guy named Jay, a writer, and he said he was going to be doing a review of the Grateful Dead concert at Madison Square Garden in Rochester, and asked me if I wanted to do the photos. And I submitted 2 photos to a magazine, a newspaper called The Aquarian. It's a free weekly newspaper in New Jersey. And they published 2 of my photos. I was paid $7.50 each for them, a total of $15. That's more than the fair paid me for my photos. Hey, come on, it's the fair. You gotta be part of the fucking scene. It's all good. And I was a published photographer at age 17, and I got paid money. I'm gonna digress here to 2023. Starting September 1st till January 28th, 2024, I have a full-on museum retrospective in San Francisco at the Contemporary Jewish Museum with 215 prints, 7 glass cases of ephemera. The opening party is on October 7th. If you're in the Bay Area for any of those 5 months, please go and check it out.
This is breaking news.
This is breaking news. This is true. And that tear sheet from that newspaper with those 2 photographs that I took when I was 17 is in the exhibit. When the archivist from the museum came to my house to look at my ephemera to decide what they were going to put in the glass cases, she's like, why do you still have this? And it's in an archival box. And I'm like, I've been waiting for you for 45 years to hand this to you. And so please, if you're in the Bay Area, come check it out. It's called Retro Blakesberg, The Music Never Stopped. And it's up there for 5 months. Okay, so going back, so the summer tour ends, and I was pretending to be in college. So after that September 6, 1980 show, I went back to photography college in New Jersey. But the band was going to go and do 15 nights at the Warfield, where they were going to play an acoustic set followed by 2 electric sets. So I just kept flying back and forth to the West Coast, to San Francisco, back to New Jersey, pretending to be in college, until I eventually dropped out in January to go see the New Year shows in Oakland, or I guess they were still in Oakland at that point. And then immediately went to Hawaii and tripped around the beaches for a month, came back and got in a van with Dan. God, why are you so part of this story, Dan? And we drove in a van with 12 people, and it was it the Primal, or is it the Primal van? And the only places that you could sit were in the 2 front seats. The rest of it was just open cargo space. We had 10 people back there, and so Dan and I drove most of the way because we were smart and it was comfortable. But I don't know if you remember this. We got to Iowa and the car died, and we got towed to this gas station in this Nebraska. Sorry, it was in Nebraska. And this redneck state trooper with one of those state trooper hats with the strap on the back of his neck, he's toothpick in his mouth, comes along and he's looking at us, and the van's got bumper stickers warning I brake for hallucinations, and he's like circling the van, and he's just I mean, we had enough drugs on us to go to prison forever, right? And he's circling us. And so what happened was that it was one of those vans that had the engine between the 2 front seats. It was like an old Ford Econoline kind of thing. And a metal magic marker case, right? Because we were all doing art and making art with our magic markers, fell into the engine and got caught between the electrical positive and negative and shorted out the electrical system, right? And a mechanic in this gas station in Nebraska figured it out. And Eric Eisen, who is Dan's current wife's ex-husband, but he passed away sadly. Sharon, who's here in a booth with tie-dyes, her husband wasn't married at the time. His father had a AAA card, which was what got us to the gas station to get that car fixed. Anyway, so we continue with the tour. And then we come back to New Jersey, and BT, I get back to New Jersey, and all my friends are asking for thousands of hits of acid, so BT overnights me a couple thousand hits, and I go down to the overnight facility, also known as FedEx, and I walk out of FedEx with a couple thousand hits of acid, and the fucking cops are waiting for me. And so BT was being watched in San Francisco, and they tipped off the New Jersey police because this was like a big deal. And just like in fucking Starsky and Hutch, I walked out of FedEx, and the cops came up to me, and they grabbed me and threw me against the car and said, "You're under arrest, motherfucker." And life changed again completely for me.
Largest acid bus in Jersey state history.
What's that?
Largest bus.
Largest bus dances? I don't know about that. I think you're
so. At the
hyping
time.
me up, dude. Like, come on. It's a couple thousand hits. But the thing is that I have to say, so Reagan was already president, but he had not started the war on drugs yet. So we were very, very fortunate that I did not. I mean, I know people that got arrested 2 years after me that did 15, 20 years in prison for less LSD than I had. I got arrested with 1,800 hits. There were 2,000, but the police in San Francisco confiscated 200 hits for their case against BT in San Francisco. And you know what the name of the cop was in San Francisco that did that? His name was Officer McCool. Like, what the fuck? Like, he put his business card in there, greetings from Officer McCool. Like, I go to, like, what the fuck, man? So anyway, I got sentenced to 5 years in state prison. I ended up doing 8 months. But while the wheels of justice were spinning in New Jersey, I stayed there. I cut my hair. I got a job installing cable TV. You know, like I was trying to like do everything right. And after a year, in April of '82, they convicted me of possession with LSD with intent to distribute. And then I appealed it. And then while I was out on appeal, I moved to Olympia, Washington, because you know, we had already heard about the Oregon Country Fair. We already knew about the Rainbow Gathering, right? And so in the summer of '82, in May of '82, I moved to the West Coast, and I moved to Olympia. That's when I met Lauren. Dina, did I meet you then also? Dina was my roommate. Okay, I met you before that on tour. All right.
I visited you in jail.
Oh yeah, I met Harpo before. Yeah, she came. I have visitor slips with your name on it from visiting me in prison. Thank you for bringing that organic green salad.
Are they in the
Right.
archives?
Okay.
The salad.
I had the largest visitors list in the history of the prison because every time people were on tour, they would come and visit me, right, and ask for special privileges. And I remained a vegetarian the entire time I was in prison because all of my friends would bring me food to eat on the weekends and when they would come to visit, and I was allowed one 30-pound food package per month. And I was sprouting my own alfalfa sprouts in the prison. And let me tell you something, the brothers from the ghetto in prison, they had never seen fucking alfalfa sprouts, and they loved them. They fucking loved them. I had a whole black market going alfalfa sprouts. We were all sprouting alfalfa sprouts, okay? It was unbelievable. So anyway, I'm very, very fortunate. And Grape, will you just tell me when I'm getting close to like my 40 minutes, because I don't have a...
You got 25 to go.
All right.
All right.
Everybody okay? I'm not boring you. Like this is because normally I have pictures of all of this on screens, right? Because I'm a photographer, or as my daughter calls me, I'm a fucktographer. And so like normally I've got like the evidence, like I can show you pictures of Dan, I can show you that van getting towed in Nebraska, I can show you pictures of Lizzie, my old girlfriend, dancing wildly at a Grateful Dead concert.
I can see it.
Right, you guys can visualize this, right? Can I see that book for a second? All right, this book right here, this is my new book, Arrow here, already got it as a gift from Bacchus here, gave it to him last night. But this photo, Diane, stand up. This is Diane right there on the cover of the book, all right? This is taken at the Rainbow Gathering on July 4th, 1984, the California Rainbow Gathering. So, you know, we knew about the Oregon Country Fair. So in the summer of '82, I moved to Olympia, Washington, and I go to Evergreen. But the first thing I did is I drove down to the Bay Area because the Dead were playing 3 shows at the Greek Theater in Berkeley. So I went to that, came back, and then summer fucking started, right? So first thing that I did is I hitchhiked to the Rainbow Gathering with Betsy Shell and Kristen Gahn. There's a sign that we have that says Portland on it. Almost made it into the museum exhibit, still have it, colored in magic markers. He was at the Rainbow Gathering. Robert's another person who I met right around that same time. Going on 40 years here, brother. Hi, Robert. And so, and then after the Rainbow Gathering, and then we all got dysentery because you know how that rolls there with the food in the kitchens. We came to the Oregon Country Fair, and that was my first Oregon Country Fair, 1982. And back then, when they did the sweep, I hid in a tent, in Sharon's tent behind her tie-dye booth. And I made it through the sweep. But back then, they didn't have like security every 40 feet after the sweep, like kicking you out. So like once you made it past the sweep, you were fucking in. You could go to the midnight show, right? And also at that 82 Oregon Country Fair, and I have the fucking photo to prove it, it's not in the exhibit, there was a unicorn here. I have a picture of a fucking unicorn. Okay, remember the unicorn? And I came to that fair, by the way, with Lizzie right there. Raise your hand, Lizzie. We came to the fair together. We hid in that tent together. We probably had sex in that tent together. I can say that only because your husband left the fair already. But I think we went to the Ritz first to shower, so we were clean. It was all good. Okay. And that was my first fair, and then I kept coming back to the fair. But so as 82 rolled on, the Grateful Dead played at the Frost Amphitheater in Palo Alto in October of 82, and I drove down with, do you guys know who Leapin' Louie is? So I drove down with Leapin' Louie. He was a good friend of mine, and he was dating this woman, Jenny Joseph, this friend of ours who lives in San Francisco. And then he left Jenny for the Romanian trapeze artist, right? Or was it the Czechoslovakian? I think it was Romanian. And so Leapin' Louie left Jenny, and she was just devastated over the trapeze artist. But I came down, and after the shows at the Frost, I hitchhiked back up to Olympia, and it took me 5 days to hitchhike to Olympia. Like, I don't know why, I think literally in Humboldt County, sat on the highway for 8 hours, never got a ride. My friends had left town who I stayed with the night before, so it was dark out, so it was October, it gets dark early. I walked up onto campus and put my sleeping bag out. What I didn't realize is I was on the main path to campus, and I woke up and everybody's just like walking over me going to classes, right? And so, anyway, so I got up and I hitched. I made it to Portland, Oregon. I got stuck there. My old roommate, Christine, who lived with us, Dina, her brother lived in Portland and went and saw the Who that night. I made it hitchhiking to Vancouver, Washington, over the bridge, and then I got on a Greyhound bus and spent my last $6 to go home to Olympia. And then a week later, my father called me and said, "You lost your appeal. You have to come back to New Jersey, and you have to start your prison sentence." I got sentenced to 5 years in state prison, and I was really fortunate that I only actually spent 8 months in prison. Like I said earlier, I know people that spent 15, 20 years. If that was me, I would not be here talking to you. I wouldn't be making books. My life would be completely different. I wouldn't have my children. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling how many lives were destroyed by fucking Ronnie and Nancy Reagan, the motherfucking cocksuckers. Sorry about my political views here. But, you know, I don't feel strongly about those motherfuckers. Anyway, so I got very fortunate, and I spent 8 months in state prison in a place called Annandale. And prison, like I said, was a fascinating experience. Listen, don't get me wrong, you know, like anybody, even the young people or us old people, like none of us want to be in prison. But like when you're 19, 20 years old, we're very resilient, and you can actually survive 8 months in prison. And I really wish that I had a camera, but they would not let me have one, of course. But I was a weirdo, man. Like another thing that you guys may or may not know about me is that I was a juggler. And you guys know the Mud Bay jugglers that are performing like in 15 minutes here? I was a Mud Bay juggler for a number of years. They kicked me out when I went to prison because they said, we can't have no convicts working with us. So I juggled in jail. Like, they'd never seen anybody like me, a juggling fucking hippie from the Rainbow Gathering that was a vegetarian in prison. They loved me because I gave them all my meat, right? Like, they're like, give me your meat, juggler. I'm like, you can have my meat, give me your overcooked canned vegetables. You know, and so prison was an experience. I think most of these people that know me at one time or another came and visited me at what we called Sunny Camp Annandale, also known as the Youth Correctional Institute at Annandale. It was called a Youth Correctional Institute, but because of the overcrowding in the prison system, there were people there that were up to like 40 years old. And you know how when you go to the fair, or maybe you start college, or maybe you're on Dead Tour, and you're like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? Where do you go to college? You know, that kind of thing. Like in jail, it's like, hey man, what county did you come from? How much time they give you? What's your crime? You know? So like, you know, making small talk. Hey man, what are you in for? He's like, murder. I'm like, dude, you go over there, I'm gonna go over here. So prison was a fascinating experience, and And all of that's part of actually the museum exhibit. And the best part about it, so my exhibit's at the Contemporary Jewish Museum. I'm Jewish, but you don't have to be a Jewish artist to be in this museum. It just sort of flowed that way. And so while we were going through all my ephemera and all my memorabilia, by the way, when I was in prison, I kept a journal of every single letter that I wrote to every one of you, and I have them in like 6 or 7 journals, and they're really fucking cheesy. I can't really look at them. But I found a letter that I wrote to the warden asking for special privileges to celebrate Yom Kippur in prison, right? Because the Muslims were allowed to celebrate Ramadan, and they got to pray 5 times a day and had special food privileges. And so we contacted the Rabbinical College of America, which was right down the street, and we did that for Passover and Yom Kippur, and they brought us gefilte fish and matzah and grape juice, right? And then it had to go through the priest in the prison, and his name was Father Ewing, like J.R. Ewing on Dallas. Was that the show, right? The crooked dude. And the priest, the rabbi, gives us 2 big food packages, right? Matzah and all this great food. And the brothers from the ghetto, they loved the gefilte fish. I hate gefilte fish. They loved that. They loved it with alfalfa sprouts, man. It changed their lives. I changed lives in prison with gefilte fish, right? And so the fucking priest, when I went back, he said, here, you guys don't need both bags of groceries for your Passover Seder. I'll give you one. Come back in a week and get the other. And when we came back in a week, he said, I don't have that. You never gave me another one. There was only one. The fucking priest stole my matzah. Okay, like that. Only shit like that happens in fucking prison in New Jersey. Anyway, I got out of jail on September 23rd, I believe it was, 1983, after 8 months. And the next day, I flew back to Olympia, Washington, and we had a party. Jay gets at a jail party at Lauren's house. She lived at a place called Yogurt Farm. And our favorite band, Heliotrope, played. The next day after that, school started. I think I flew on a Saturday, the party was on a Sunday, and Monday, the fall semester started. There was a couple of people that lived in Olympia with us. A woman named Sue Lundy, who was a dear friend of ours who passed away a few years ago, and Danny Kelly. Both of their parents had done political work with the president of the New Jersey State Parole Board. And through a combination of, we'll call it white privilege and people who knew people, I got out of jail 5 weeks early, and so I could start the fall semester at Evergreen. Because little did they know that, like, in no time flat, we'd be back in the meadow doing acid at full moon parties. Did you take that class with me, LSD under a full moon 101? Oh, you did the mushroom class, right? Oh, you dropped out. Anyway, so how much time do we have, or where are we at?
15.
Okay, all right. Everybody okay on time? Should we leave a little bit of time for Q&A, like in a couple of minutes? Anybody have like burning questions about like what I done? Anyway, so all right, so Evergreen, I hung out in Evergreen, and Evergreen was the most beautiful experience of my life, and I think that all of us that lived there at that time can say how special it is and how connected we all still are. On so many ways. Like I said, we might not talk to each other every day. We might see each other once a year at the fair or a couple times or whatever, but we are all so connected, and there's been a couple of recent tragedies in our group that has brought us together in other ways, and it's certainly a part of my life that is just was just so unbelievable. And then Lizzie, my girlfriend, raise your hand. Your husband's not here. You can admit you were once my girlfriend. Okay, you don't have to be ashamed. They all said they were going to heckle me. Robert was going to heckle me, and he hasn't heckled me. So I had a deal with Lizzie that we would move to the Bay Area so she could start school down there at CCAC, California College of Arts and Crafts. What's it called now? California College of the Arts. And so we moved to the Bay Area, and we moved into this little apartment in Oakland. And I had to be an adult and try and figure out how to make a living. I had to pay rent. God forbid, and like rent in Olympia was like $40 a person. I mean, Jesus Christ, like anybody lived in Olympia in the 80s? I mean, that shack we lived in on with Kenny and Muirhead. No, not Muirhead. That was where I lived with Dina. Burbank Street, yeah. Anyway, so when we moved to the Bay Area, I just started taking pictures of everything that I could possibly take pictures of. And I started submitting them to magazines. I started submitting them to Relics magazine. I started getting published in Relics magazine. Lizzie and I lived in an apartment on Martin Luther King in Oakland, and this is in 1987. And we had heard rumor that the Grateful Dead were going to make an MTV video at an abandoned high school in Oakland, and we just happened to live across the street from an abandoned high school in Oakland. So I walked over there with my cameras and a pocket full of film and spent 11 hours on set with the Grateful Dead while they filmed the Throwing Stones video in Oakland. Like, if you walked onto a video set today where like a band, like a major rock band was making a video, you'd be arrested in a minute. And like about 8 hours into it, Mickey Hart comes on and he goes, well, first he says, "Hey man, come get a picture of me next to the graffiti." There was like a heart with a graffiti, Mickey's like, "Yeah man, and it said, 'Can you feel it?' It's like, 'Yeah man, can you feel it? Can you feel it? Like the heart, can you feel it? I'm Mickey Hart, can you feel?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I get it, Mickey." Right? And then somebody comes in and he goes, they go, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Jay Blakesberg, Relics Magazine." They're like, "Okay." Like, I fucking just lied. Like, I had no fucking business being there, right? And that was where Jerry had the top hat on, and you can go see all that shit on MTV, or on YouTube rather, if not MTV doesn't exist anymore, maybe it does. So by 87, I'm starting to shoot regularly, and I actually did my very, very first assignment for Rolling Stone magazine on 11/11/87, which is interesting. I'm staying at a house in Eugene this weekend that's 1111 Veronica Street. And so 11/11/87, I got a phone call from the photo editor at Rolling Stone magazine, and she said, "Hey Jay, it's Jody Peckman at Rolling Stone. I have your big break. I need you to go shoot the free U2 concert in downtown San Francisco." And so we had heard that this was going to happen over the previous week because they actually used the Grateful Dead sound system for that show. And the movie Rattle and Hum came out. I'm in the movie. I'm the guy with the Nikon camera down between Bono's legs, shot from behind. I got a mullet. It's the 80s. It's cool. I know some of you people here at the fair might have like.
We're hip again with the mullet.
What's that?
Hip again with the mullet.
Yeah.
We were cool.
Mullets are back according to Lizzie. And so you can see me in the documentary. Just look for the guy with the fucking Nikon and the mullet. And that was the beginning of a relationship with Rolling Stone magazine that lasted for 30 years. And I did over 300 assignments for Rolling Stone magazine. And so that was a game changer for me because people in the Bay Area, everybody thought that I was the Rolling Stone photographer. I was just a freelancer that was just getting all of the work in San Francisco. And it was consistent. And my work was showing up regularly. And I walked into BAM magazine, which was a Bay Area music magazine. It was a newsprint magazine, came out every 2 weeks. And I walked in and said, "Hey," in '89, "Hey, I want to come and shoot covers for you." And they're like, "Okay, but you don't have any covers in your portfolio." And a month later, they called me up, sent me to Santa Cruz to shoot a band called Camper Van Beethoven. And I went out to shoot 59 covers for BAM magazine. I also shot my very first cover in 1990 for Guitar Player magazine, which was Michael Hedges. Do you guys remember Michael Hedges? I'll tell you a quick little Michael Hedges story. Michael Hedges, known for this incredible acoustic guitar playing, and he's also known for having like this really big, thick, giant hair, right? And so 2 days before my photo shoot with Michael Hedges with his big, thick, beautiful hair, he shaves his head, okay? And he's freaking out, so he's wearing this like kind of ethnic, I don't know, from someplace that Dan Skinner probably went to and bought a hat there, traveling some foreign country, and wore this hat. I didn't see Michael Hedges for 7 years. 7 years later, I get hired by his manager to do a publicity shoot with him in San Francisco. He's playing the Great American Music Hall. And I meet him in Golden Gate Park where we do most of the shots. And he hadn't cut his hair since he shaved it 7 years earlier to the next shoot. And 3 days before the shoot, he shaved his head again. So the only 2 times I ever shot Michael Hedges is with bald head, which is weird because he's not known for that. But anyway, so from there, I just started shooting bands. And then obviously, I was shooting a lot of Grateful Dead. You guys probably, if you know me and my work, you know that I've been shooting the Grateful Dead forever, and I continue to shoot the Grateful Dead. And I did my first portrait of Jerry Garcia at that Throwing Stones video, but my first official paid portrait of him in 1991 up at the Grateful Dead office. I did a portrait of him and Robert Hunter together, one of very few of the two of them together. And that was for the Golden Road magazine. You guys remember the Golden Road, a great Grateful Dead fanzine? And all of this stuff is in the museum exhibit. There's a big Grateful Dead section. There's a big punk rock section. There's all sorts of fucking cool shit in there.
7 minutes, Jay.
How many?
7.
7 minutes. All right, I'll stop in a second and we'll do questions real quick. And so when Jerry died, we were, of course, all fucking devastated, and our lives all changed, and we all thought, fuck, do I have to, like, get a job and start a family and do, like, real shit now and be an adult? No, not doing that. Yes, we all did that, but we all still stayed together, and we discovered bands like String Cheese and Fish and, 2.0 bands, and came back to the fair and connected with our people and continue to have experiences, and maybe started micro-dosing because macro-dosing was like too much for us old people. Actually, the last time I did a really big dose of acid, we had a record release party with our friends Heliotrope, right? Their record came out, and we went up and we had this party, and Robert, this guy right here, handed me a bottle of fucking liquid, and I did a drop, and then I did another drop, and then I was like, maybe I'll do one more. Well, I dosed everybody in the room, yes, I kept the vial, and then I was trying to do one more small drop, and then Tony, our friend who was doing sound, he puddled me and forced me to lick my hand, and then I looked at Betsy, and I said, Betsy, there's my backpack. When you leave, take that and me with you. And so I did about 500 mics, and ended up back at Kenny's house, and at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and just like staring at the kitchen ceiling. But since then, I've only microdosed, right? Because now we're fucking old and it takes forever. That was the time, and then we went to Sue's house and drove down to Rochester, and you almost killed us because you can't drive, Lizzie. I'm not so sure about that. I've heard from a lot of people, don't get in a car with Lizzie.
You taught me to drive, so.
All right, you live in New York City.
Yes.
Anyway, so the moral of the story is that Jerry died, and then I became even more enmeshed in the Grateful Dead. I've been on tour with Dead & Co. this summer. I've seen so far 14 of the shows. They're actually on fire. They're smoking. It's great. I got 3 more to go in San Francisco. I started out as a kid at Englishtown in 1977 with a bong on my chest, and now I work with the band, and they fucking pay me money to go take pictures of them. What the fuck, right? I'm the luckiest person in the world. I'm thrilled that you guys look at my work on Instagram or Facebook or buy my books, support what I do. I really, truly am blessed that I get to come to the fair. I'm blessed that I'm still friends with so many people that I've known for so many decades, and we all still love each other and are still all in each other's lives. We've all had incredible lives. Keep having great experiences. Stay psychedelic, even if it's just once a year. Just blow out the cobwebs because it really helps. Anybody have any questions? I have incredible memory because of all the drugs I've done, and just. So he asked what was the first show I got paid to shoot. It wasn't a show. Bob Weir hired me to do a portrait of him. He was doing a new solo project with Rob Wasserman, Weir Wasserman. And I have been shooting all of Rob Wasserman's solo record stuff, and so Bobby's office, via Rob's people, called me and hired me in July of 1990. I think it was July 1st, 1990. I did a portrait of Bob Weir in the studio in South of Market in San Francisco, and they paid me money to photograph a member of the Grateful Dead. From there, I went on to do a lot of stuff with Bobby for the next 5 years. He did a couple children's books, and I did the author photos for those. A bunch of magazine features. I did a big story on him riding his mountain bike and his road bike up in Mount Tam, and so, and it was at that point where I could call Bob's office and be like, "Hey, the Grateful Dead are playing 5 nights in Oakland. Can you give me backstage passes and tickets for every night?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, no problem." And so that's how we rolled.
So you mentioned you were Jewish, and I don't know why this to me is a particular Jewish question other than I'm Jewish and a mother, and I'm so curious what your parents were thinking of a 16, 17, 18-year-old and then going to jail, and like, what was your whole parents' story?
Yeah.
What was my parents' story? Well, first of all, I'm not a Hasidic Jew, I'm an Asidic Jew. So that's a big help. You know, I mean, I'm 61 years old. Our parents didn't know what the fuck we were doing when we were 16, 17 years old. There was no fucking, they weren't like tracking our phones like, you know.
Right.
There was like, I was like, hey mom, I'm gonna go see the Grateful Dead in Hampton, Virginia and Baltimore, Maryland for 2 nights. Is that cool? I'm gonna go with this guy that's fucking your daughter and jump in his van, and then we're gonna get in a car accident and hitchhike back. Is that cool? Yeah, have fun, son. Like, what the fuck? Like, they had no fucking clue. We were drug dealers. We were like, but I mean, the first time my daughter took acid was at Fare Thee Well with 70,000 people in the stadium. Like, why are you choosing to take acid and with 70,000 people? She's like, because my parents are here. If something goes wrong, I can just come to you guys. So, you know, that's like a big difference between that generation and us and our generation and then. And my daughter, she had blotter acid, and she didn't know if you're supposed to chew it, swallow it, suck on it. And she was trying to find me to ask that question. And I got there too late. So what do you think they did to figure it out? They went on YouTube. How do you take blotter acid? Right? If you need to do that, just Google that on YouTube and you'll figure it out. Okay. Wait, there was a question over here.
Yeah, for your conversation with Jerry, what was the funniest thing you said back?
So all of he asked what my conversations with Jerry were like, and what was the funniest thing he said back to me. You know, Jerry was, you've seen interviews, you read interviews, you've listened to them. Jerry was very sarcastic, very clever, super fucking smart. When I was photographing Jerry one-on-one, it was all business, right? Because I photographed people like Neil Young, Carlos Santana, people that have been rock stars since they're 15, 16, 17 years old, right? So these people don't know how to buy a loaf of bread. They don't know how to like do their laundry because people have been doing it for them their whole lives, right? So I go and photograph these people, and they've been being photographed since they're 17 years old. They're so over being photographed, right? But if I get hired by somebody to do a portrait of Neil Young, if I don't come back with a really great portrait, why would they ever hire me again? So I've got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes with an artist like that, and then they want to just go have lunch. They don't give a shit. They're over it, right? So most people that I do, and I didn't have a lot of other conversations with Jerry outside of that, but people like Neil Young and Carlos Santana, like those are people that I've spent time with outside of photo shoots and had conversations with. So what did Jerry say? He said nothing. He said everything. He didn't need to say anything. It was just like this.
Yeah.
It was like this. I will tell you though, one time I was photographing him and David Grisman for a magazine cover, and you give Garcia a guitar and he'll sit around forever, and he started singing. And I'm in David Grisman's living room, me, my assistant, and the writer, and I had to tell Jerry Garcia, I go, Jerry, you can't sing. You gotta hum it in your head because it's a magazine cover and your mouth is gonna be all like wonky in the cover. Who fucking tells Jerry Garcia in a private concert in somebody's living room, can you stop singing? Bacchus.
Oh yeah, I'm good. So Jay, back in the day, you shot everything. You documented your experiences. We can see on the cover people. Now it's mainly rock stars, artists, whatever. But I know you still sometimes shoot people. What motivates you to decide to take shots that are not rock stars? And when will we see those pictures, if ever?
So that's not a true statement, because when I first started photographing Deadheads on tour in the early 80s, they were all my friends, right? So like, social media, Facebook, Instagram, people were always like, how come you don't have any pictures of me? Well, A, you were a fucking drug dealer fucking your best friend's girlfriend, so you didn't let me take your picture, right? You ran away from me. There was a lot of that. Like, people are like, I always ran away from you. I thought you were a narc. I'm like, what the fuck, dude, right? So most of the pictures of Deadheads from the 80s are my friends, right? Because that's who we were hanging out with. But I've been photographing fans and the scene separate from the musicians, we'll call it the offstage experience, really from the beginning. And where will you see them? I did a book called Hippie Chick 7 years ago, which is it's a book about women and their connection to live music, right? So it's called Hippie Chick, A Story of Love, Devotion, and Surrender. You love a band, you love the music, you love a song, you love a scene, you love a community, you're devoted, you travel long distances, you see them over and over again. You collect memorabilia, set lists, whatever it might be, listen to the music, you surrender to the moment, you forget about the husband, the kids, the car payment, the carpool, whatever it is, and be in that moment. And that's what that book is about. And so, it's the beauty of that experience through my lens of women, because to me that's fucking breaks away from the patriarchy. Right, because there's so much independence in the matriarchy, and I think that, and it's, listen, I'm a fucking guy, so don't fucking roast me over this shit, right? But I just think there's just so much magic in the female form of dancing, and I love to document it. Grape's got a question.
I know, it's a crowd question. So you've been a professional photographer since you were 17. What's your viewpoint on how photography has changed? And do you feel that everybody being able to whip out their phone and take something in 4K has improved photography overall? or do you feel like there's something both consumers and producers of photography need to know about the new media?
Great wants to know how photography has changed, and everybody's got a camera in their pocket and cell phones and things like that. I mean, there's so many different levels. So they always say, you know, what's the best camera to use? It's the one that's in your pocket. I think, like on a level of, let's say, you know, all of you guys going to a concert and everybody holding their phone up, you know, so you have bad, out of focus pictures of your favorite part, and then you post it on Facebook, and everybody's like, "Holy shit! Fucking amazing! You have a picture of fucking Trey on stage from 9,000 feet away that's out of focus and blurry, and you can't tell who it is." You know, like it's bullshit, right? And so, you know, I think that it's good, it's bad. I mean, there's a whole book that could be written about it.
What's one thing we can all do better with our photography?
What's one thing you can all do better with your photography? Learn how to take good pictures. And then share only the good ones. Stop oversharing the fucking bullshit.
You got one more question.
Okay, one more question. Great.
Somebody else.
Oh, Randy?
I want to know what, of all the work that you do and all the work that you've done, what's your favorite thing to do?
What's my favorite thing to do out of all the things that I've done? Document the human experience. Document the modern day hippie tribe. That was a short one, so we'll do you two.
Which museum in San Francisco?
The Contemporary Jewish Museum on Mission Street. It opens August 31st, September 1st, and it goes till January 28th, 2024. And the opening party, which is free to everybody, is October 7th. You guys know who Lebo is? He's playing here today with Nikki Bloom. Lebo is putting a great band together that'll be performing at that opening on October 7th. And it's going to be a big community celebration. Please come out, and there'll be a whole bunch of other programming throughout the 5-month run.
Jay,
thank you all for listening.
Jay, I like your stuff so much. Where can I buy it online?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure. Thanks, great. Just go to my last name, Blakesberg, BLAKESBERG.com, and take you to my store, and you can buy my shit.
Where can
Thanks, everybody.